So yeah, maybe I can just start by introducing what we're doing here.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
the Reimagining AI series, it's a series of conversations about AI. It's AI is something that's so in the public consciousness, but the narratives are quite limited, where there's actually many narratives around this subject, many interesting things happening around the subject. And yeah, we just want to expand the narrative and also allow more people into this conversation, allow different people into this conversation, so that maybe we can also encourage different people to get involved in the AI space. It's important in like shaping what it could become for the future. So yeah, our first interview is with Gabriele De Seta, an academic from Bergen University, who is leading the ALGOFOLK project. So yeah, Gabriele, thank you for joining us, and
Yeah,
maybe you
thank you
can
for
just
having me.
start. Oh, maybe you can just start by telling us a bit about yourself and more about the ALGOFOLK project.
Yeah, sure. Well, hello everyone. Glad to be here. I didn't realize this was the first one, so it's a big pressure. Um, yeah, well, I'm a social scientist, a little bit in between sociology, anthropology, and the humanities in general. And I have been studying digital culture, digital media for around, yeah, a decade, I guess. And I've always been interested in digital culture in global contexts. So I mostly focus on East Asia and Chinese-speaking areas. Yes, I've studied a different number of things, starting with the internet when it was still relevant, I'd say, and then social media, and then moving towards what was called big data, that today is more called something like machine learning or artificial intelligence, and following the hypes of digital technologies. So now I have recently started the new project, the one you mentioned, that's called ALGOFOLK, which is a short version of its whole title, which is Algorithmic Folklore, the mutual shaping of creativity and automation. So it's a 4-year project here at the University of Bergen. Uh, and I will lead this team of 5 people, and we're hoping to look into algorithms, or whatever everyone thinks our algorithms are,
Mm.
and how they interface with creativity, both human creativity and machine creativity.
Mm.
So yeah, that's our central key concept, I guess.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation first is just to get into like the technical aspects of AI and what it is and what we imagine it to be. And algorithms is has a lot of like mystery and questions, have a lot of mystery and questions around them. What are they? What do they do? How are they programmed, in our experiences with them online? So yeah, if you can just like tell us more about what algorithms are technically and how they become shrouded in all this mystery.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. That's a great question, and it's a question I keep asking because it's for me it's really interesting to hear what people think algorithms are, by people I mean all kinds of people, from very technical professional experts, computer scientists, programmers, theorists of computation, or mathematicians, down to or in parallel with everyday users, or even people who have very little idea about how the digital media work. It's really interesting. And so, yeah, technically, what algorithm means for most, in technical parlance, is it's quite simple. It's a set of rules, or a procedure made by a set of rules, often to achieve a certain goal. And in fact, an algorithm doesn't need to be digital, doesn't even need to be strictly computational. It can be literally like a recipe, right? A recipe to make a certain dish is an algorithm that you can execute with the proper doses of ingredients, and you get a result. and it works every time, right? If you follow the steps. So it's a rather broad term, and then it's been used, of course, in logic, mathematics, and in complex, more or less complex systems like cybernetics. And today, algorithms are widely used in computer science to build stuff, including systems that we call artificial intelligence. But actually, in machine learning, algorithms are very important, but they're just a little part or a substantial part, but still just a part of machine learning as a whole. And there are other parts like models, right, or interfaces, data sets that are also very important. But what happened I think, in popular discussions around technologies, that algorithm becomes a much broader term than its technical meaning, much like artificial intelligence. And so, people discuss algorithms or discuss a lot of things as algorithms. So you might say, well, the Facebook algorithm, the TikTok algorithm, the Tesla self-driving algorithm, or pedestrian detecting algorithm, or your insurance's algorithm, or just the algorithm. Like you hear a lot of just discussion of the algorithm as if there was a giant, massive algorithm that governs our digital lives. So it's very much imagined also as a kind of metaphor for the digital as a whole.
Yeah. So what are a couple of stories, because your project is based on folklore, like some stories. What are a couple of stories that have developed about algorithms, and how have those stories emerged?
Yeah. My project is based around folklore, which does include stories. I mean, folk stories are a great example, and I think folk stories have always been around, and they are actually related to technology. There are many folk stories of algorithms that people produce and create. And also, I want to emphasize that folk stories doesn't necessarily mean they're just stories. Sometimes they are very much real, or they have a part of truth in them. Ones I can think of are the kind of stories people tell about social media algorithms. For example, Twitter, which we now know as X. The very transition between Twitter and X has come with changes to the governance of the platform, and how people, for example, how people's posts are promoted by the platform. So after it has become X, with new moderation policies and new ways of promoting content for paid accounts, for example, people don't really know how their content is promoted or not, if they are shadow banned or not on X. And so they develop theories, they develop stories, and they think, for example, that if you talk about Elon Musk in a negative light, you might get shadow banned, or if you talk about some topics, you might get less exposure. And conversely, if you take certain ideological positions, you might be promoted more easily, which gives rise to accounts that basically spam around certain issues to get more visibility. And all the theories around this are basically stories, right? People share them through personal communications, or they discuss them on the platform, and they disseminate, and they're rarely tested. So they become a sort of folk knowledge about the platform's algorithm, so to say. In this case, the algorithm is not a simple algorithm. It's likely a recommender system, right? The Twitter's and now X's recommender system, which is probably a complicated bricolage of many algorithms and other kinds of systems. But nevertheless, people try to make sense of it through stories like, if you post this, you'll get less exposure. Or the last few months, I've been writing a lot about this. I'm getting way more retweets or way less likes. So I think this is what the platform is doing. And these are very common stories across platforms. I think this is a very good example recently. Other stories can be more abstract or can be more generally related to algorithmic society at large. There's many typical stories about algorithms knowing you. For example, I have a colleague here at the University of Bergen, Marianne Gundersen, who's doing work on the TikTok algorithm and how people think that the TikTok algorithm understands them, maybe even better than their friends or their families or their therapist. So what happens is that TikTok's recommender system and content analysis system is so good or so accurate in understanding what people like and what people post that users start feeling this algorithm and start feeling the operations of this algorithm and to make up theories about it and to give it some kind of agency and saying and thinking, oh, this technical object, this algorithm understands me, or it understands me even better than myself, maybe. So maybe this is a bit more of a broader folklore, which is not necessarily stories, but just beliefs or intuitions that people discuss among themselves about a platform.
Yeah, but one of the things that can be interesting about algorithms, because they're quite mysterious to us because we don't really know how they work or how they're programmed.
Yeah.
And sometimes they make like weird errors that I don't know if it speaks to human error or just to a fallibility of these systems somehow. Does that make people realize, does it point to the fallibility of the systems, or does it have like other outcomes in how users think about them?
Yeah, I think algorithms fail. They obviously fail because they're built to make decisions, right? That's the main point of an algorithm, is to get to a goal. And when you use an algorithm to make decisions, from very basic decisions like yes or no, is this content this or that, or very complex ones like is this content violent, or is this content promoting certain types of behavior? Those are complex questions, but you still want it to succeed. So if you build something to succeed, it can obviously also fail. And so I think failure is an unavoidable part of it that computer science and even all kinds of disciplines try to minimize algorithmic failure. They try to make algorithms that are more and more accurate, that are more and more reliable. But there's always this hopefully little percentage of failures that become very evident because when algorithms become so prevalent in our digital infrastructure, as all infrastructure, they become invisible. So actually, even me and you, I think, and many users of social media and apps and different kinds of platforms forget or don't see how many algorithms are constantly at work behind these interfaces because they work, because they don't make errors. When they make errors, they suddenly become visible again. And luckily, right, we can see the error and see that there is an algorithm at work there, or an automated system of some kind. So in a way, that's a kind of an infrastructural effect. But I think what's interesting about these errors or mistakes or failures is that sometimes or many times they do reveal biases. They do reveal that some delegation has been made that is dangerous because something has been automated that creates no problem 99.999% of the time, but that 0.001% it does create problems, and huge problems. Because you removed a human from the loop and suddenly an algorithm creates harm to groups, individuals, or even economic harms or political threats. So I think that's interesting part about the visibility of algorithmic failure.
Yeah, you touched on a few different ways that users can be impacted by algorithms, and I'm wondering, how do users respond? Whether it's in situations that can be harmful, or whether it's feeling that the algorithm knows more about them than their friends do. How do users respond to this phenomena?
Yeah, I think the main bet of my project is that they respond precisely by creating algorithmic folklore. That means that, when a technology takes up rapidly, like automation in this case, knowledge about how it works often trails behind it by a few years or decades even. And this creates a void, right? A void of knowledge, a void of sense, meaning making. And so when experts like me fail at producing knowledge that people can use, or when companies deliberately don't share knowledge about these systems, this void is filled by people trying to make sense of them. So I think what happens is that people try to make sense of algorithmic systems. They try to make sense of algorithms. And as you said, these are, they're complex things. They're complex sequences of instructions. They're also hard to see. You cannot just look at a web page source and read which algorithms Facebook's using to recommend content, right? They're hidden. They're very often hidden and even protected by private actors. And so people can't just go study an algorithm. So they need to make sense of it. And to make sense of it, they rely on these kind of everyday practices of sense making that they have available. That can be as simple as doing a little experiment and posting something, see if it works or not, and drawing some conclusions. And after they draw these conclusions, they tell their friends, and their friends say, "Yes, I noticed too." And their friend they tell them to their friends, and this starts spreading. And it starts spreading exactly like urban legends spreads, and exactly like folk stories used to spread uh, years or decades or centuries ago. And I think these are very similar things. They were all trying to fill some void of knowledge. Today it's about algorithms, and some decades ago it might have been about cars, about electricity, and if you go back in time, it's about other kinds of media technologies. So I think that's what users do. Most they try to make sense of it with whatever they have available, whatever literacy they have available, and with whatever tools and agency they have available to them. And some users are way more privileged in terms of access to tools, in terms of access to knowledge. If you're a bit of a hacker, if you're a bit of you like computer science, or you're a bit educated in it, you have some kind of media literacy, you can do more to understand algorithms and to explain to others how they work. And if you don't have that privilege, then you try to make sense of them with what you have.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I think it's also interesting that the platforms that raise the questions are often also the platforms where the algorithmic folklore is discussed as well.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that's one of the most fascinating things, actually, that our core idea of algorithmic folklore is that it's not just that people produce this kind of, folk materials to make sense of the algorithms. It's also that the algorithms that these platforms use are actually, many times they actually contribute to reinforcing this theories or these stories or these materials kind of content, because they're built to circulate things that people enjoy. They're built to circulate things that people agree with or disagree with. So you have this recursive cycle where a person makes up a story about an algorithm, or makes up a funny video that exploits an algorithm, or makes up a ritual to avoid some kind of algorithmic surveillance, and the platform promotes it precisely because it's interesting to other people. So you have algorithmic systems that are both the topic of this folklore, but they're also part of it. So they're part of how it's created. They're part of how it's circulated. And to some extent, they do shape this kind of creativity. So it's a very interesting loop.
Thank you. So, just to close off, what's sort of like the next step in your project? What are you going to be looking at next?
Yeah, I'm very interested as well, because I'm still waiting for all the other team members to start on this project. For now, it's just me. So I'm sure that they will have their own directions of inquiry. And the project is it tries to have a very global scope. So I'm hoping, to work with people who will study algorithmic folklore in less researched global contexts that are not necessarily Europe or the US, where different platforms might have different kinds of folklore, or they might use different kinds of algorithms, or use them in different ways. For me, at the moment, I'm very interested in the uses of generative AI models that are a bit out of the box. So not just to make more cute cats doing strange things, or Donald Trump deepfakes. I'm looking at some more weirder loops through which users use these generative AI models to make specific kinds of content that maybe they used to monetize, or to contribute to some kind of political opinion manipulation, or geopolitical struggle. So I'm looking a little bit into deepfakes and how they're disseminated on certain social media platforms.
Really interesting. Thank you so much, Gabriele, for
Yeah,
your
thank you,
time.
thank you.
And just it's so interesting to dig deeper and get new perspectives about something that's so everyday, but different ways of
Yeah,
thinking of it,
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the interesting part for me. It's always been looking into everyday media, or the everyday use, or the everyday life of these digital technologies that seem very, about the future and about high technological worlds, but then exist with us in everyday life. Yeah.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
thank
Yeah.
you again, and
Yeah.
good luck on the project.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll keep you all informed,
Yeah,
and we'll follow the next episodes. Yeah.
awesome. Bye for
Great.
now.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.